Spork, Wojcic's point guard mania, Chris Paul, Kyle Lowry, Kemba Walker, Spencer Dinwiddie, Mike Conley, Lonzo Ball, Dennis Schroder, Derrick Rose, Eric Bledsoe. So many could be on the move. Let's start with the Lakers, who have a big decision to make with Dennis Schroder, turned down a big money extension. They don't really have an easy way to replace him, despite the fact that he had a slightly disappointing season. What could we see from Tinseltown?
Well, as you said, Schroder turned down that 4-year, $84 million extension, which was the most the Lakers could offer him during the season, knowing that there was more out for him in free agency. And you have teams like Chicago and New York with cap space, New Orleans trying to create the cap space to go get a big point guard, perhaps Dallas in that mix. But listen, I think people have to look back at this postseason with Dennis Schroder. And remember, he had COVID late in the year and was out for 10 days and not in the gym and sick, and then showed up and played in the playoffs. The performance wasn't there, but we saw plenty of other players in the league who went through that at different points in the year. They traded for him from Oklahoma City a year ago with the idea that they would re-sign him. And as you said, they cannot replace him if he leaves. They have literally offered Kyle Kuzma and KCP to almost every team I've talked to in the league has been offered some combination of Kuz and KCP, sometimes both of them, one of them, and that's not going to get them back a point guard of Dennis's stature. And so I think, listen, he's got options again. Chicago, New York. I still think in the end there's a deal to be made for him to stay with the Lakers because all of a sudden now you're talking about could we go get Ricky Rubio, like some good players, but I still think Schroder is a player who moves the needle, and let's get him out of a COVID season, get him back with a training camp with this team, and it's probably going to look a lot different.
They need another playmaker to take some of the load from LeBron. That was the idea. They badly need that playmaker to be able to shoot better than Dennis Schroder can shoot and shot last year. Finding that player is going to be very difficult for them. You can start making up double sign-in trades with Schroder for another free agent point guard. Those are very complicated deals. There is another point guard who can shoot really well, but is probably out of the Lakers' price range, and that's Chris Paul, who has a 40-something million
44
player option with the Phoenix Suns. Just made the finals with them. Wants to be near his family on the West Coast. Phoenix checked that box. Where do we stand with CP3 in free agency?
That is a fascinating question in this offseason, because remember, it's not just Chris Paul, but they've got Cameron Payne they have to pay to keep. They have extension eligible DeAndre Ayton, Mikal Bridges. DeAndre Ayton is going to want a max contract, and he's going to get it next year in restricted free agency if you don't give it to him now. Mikal Bridges might be a $20 million a year player. Now I don't
think there's a might be there. I think he's going to get paid a lot of money.
Absolutely. Now you can push those guys off a year and deal with restricted free agency, but this is a test for Robert Sarver and his willingness to spend. It is not inconceivable that Chris Paul opts out of that contract and comes into this free agent market. And then all of a sudden the Suns are competing with everybody else and other options. And he has a lot more options in free agency right now than he had trade options coming out of OKC last year, even at 36 years old.
Well, that would be a huge story. And like you said, they have a year window left where Bridges and Ayton are on their rookie deals. The pain financially comes in the next year. A team that is experiencing a lot of pain financially, but that's what they signed up for. The Brooklyn Nets tears ACL. We don't know when he's coming back. He could miss the whole season. We just need to acknowledge it. Is there any Kawhi Leonard leaving the Clippers possibility? What do we know? Because I don't care if he's injured. Teams will line up to get. We saw with Kevin Durant. If you're a top 5-6 player, teams are going to line up to get you, even if you're going to be out for the season. Maybe. What do we know about Kawhi?
I've gotten no indication that Kawhi Leonard is interested in doing anything but re-signing with the Clippers, rehabbing that injury. And you talk to other teams and agents who might be talking with the Clippers. The way they're proceeding certainly seems to be with Kawhi Leonard in mind. And listen, you don't know until a player signs that contract, but you just said it's an ACL. And there's an expectation that he could miss next season. You tear your ACL in the playoffs, especially in a season where we're pushed up against next season a month later, like they can't assume he will be on the court next year, so they've got to proceed accordingly here in free agency and at the draft with their own players. But I don't have any sense that he plans to do anything but to continue forward with Paul George and that group.
So if it's status quo in LA with Kawhi, And the current intel best we have is it's going to be status quo with Damian Lillard in Portland for a while. I don't think that deal, as of now, that doesn't appear to be something that's happening this offseason. That leaves us with the other big name that we've got to mention that will absolutely be in play this offseason, is already in play right now, and that's Ben Simmons in Philadelphia, which is the other obvious Beal team that I mentioned. This is a very complicated situation. His value, I think, is at an all-time low after just a really bad series against Atlanta where it looked like the free throws and everything was in his head. He passed up that dunk in Game 7 that was just, frankly, jarring to see. What's the latest we have on Ben Simmons?
The Sixers are engaged out there in trade talks, and they're taking on offers, they're making offers around the league. They're trying to get a sense, listen, who's the best possible player they can get back, because they're doing a trade to want to continue to be a championship contender. Like, they don't have to they can't be in of a mindset, and I don't believe they are, of we just have to move him. He's got 4 years left on his contract, and they can't overreact to that Atlanta series.
4 ironclad years, no options, no nothing. 4 ironclad years.
Which means he really has no leverage in where he could go. If you trade for Ben Simmons, you know you've got him under contract. He's going to come and play, and that opens up the landscape of teams. But I think it will be serious this week, and they're certainly, if there's a deal out there, they're going to do it. But they also know they get one crack at this, and making the wrong deal, it takes them out of championship contention with Joel Embiid in his prime. They've got to be really careful. But you know Daryl Morey, like, it is hard for him to, when there's a deal to be had in the air, no one loves making big deals more than him.
Well, you know, they went after Harden and didn't get Harden, and everyone thought, well, if they don't get Harden, Beal's the next logical target. But I think a name that's really interesting as an inflection point is C.J. McCollum in Portland. A Simmons for McCollum swap, who has to throw in draft equity, you know, they'll argue about that. But that has made theoretical sense. Theoretical, I say, because McCollum comes to Philly, and he's the guard that they don't have. The shooting, playmaking threat fits well with Joel Embiid. But then if you're Philly, you start to say, well, boy, that puts a lot of pressure on Joel Embiid to carry the defense almost by himself. And we saw what happened to Rudy Gobert in the playoffs when Utah built that kind of roster with them. And as you said, they don't want just anybody for Ben Simmons. They want an all-star player for Ben Simmons. And CJ is a very good player. He's never been an all-star team. When they look at Portland, they see the other guy.
They want the other guy.
They see the other guy.
Who's not available.
And say, we want that guy, which to me makes it for a very interesting situation. If the Sixers can get a guard some other way, just in theory, if they can sign and trade for Kyle Lowry, then they can look at their team and say, okay, we've papered over one need. What if we keep Simmons, see how he functions in this ecosystem where we have a legit lead guard, ups his trade value, see what happens in Portland, see what other situation goes haywire around the league, because something always goes haywire somewhere, and see what Ben Simmons' trade value looks like in January, February. I think that frankly makes a lot of sense.
Zach, I think more than anything, the fact that Simmons has 4 years left on his contract means that the Sixers don't just have to.
Names on the trade block and in free agency, starting with All-NBA, All-Star Bradley Beal in Washington, and some other big names too. Come back with us on the Woj Low.
To give them 5. Straight up, get rid of him. He's so petrified of shooting. Everybody and their grandmother's been telling you to shoot the basketball.
A lot of things are being said. It hasn't come from me. I haven't made any firm decision on what my future will be.
Are you frustrated?
Is the sky blue?
Welcome back to the Woj and Low Special, presented by Kia.
Welcome back to the Woj Low offseason extravaganza. We hit the draft now. Woj, let's go to the biggest veterans that could be moving, maybe moving. Who knows if they're moving? And it has to start in Washington with Bradley Beal, who's entering the last year of his contract, coming off a sensational All-NBA 30-plus points per game season. Where do we stand? Again, we're 4 days before the draft. Like, if they're going to anything's going to happen, there's got to be a little clarity soon. Where do we stand with this?
Bradley Beal has not told the Washington Wizards that he would like a trade. He has not told them anything, but he is invested in helping them in free agency. And, he's obviously gotten a chance to talk to Wes Unseld Jr., their new coach. Now, there's still time for that to happen. But the mechanism to do a Bradley Beal trade or any trade of a player of that caliber is to do it before the draft, because you want to do it around draft picks. Once the draft passes, it's a lot harder to do that deal, because hypothetically, if you were going to do it with Golden State, you're going to tell the Warriors who the players are. You would like it 7 and 14 if those players are in it. And so, listen, Bradley Beal has known the timetable of this, that if he wanted it to be moved, if he wasn't going to sign the extension and decided